So welcome in, Maddie. So excited to have you in here.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, praise God. So I say this to every person that comes on this podcast, and that is the purpose of the Agape Leaders podcast is to help people grow in their faith. And I saw a post of you praying with one of the contestants at the Miss Florida Outstanding Teen competition. And I said, I have got to have that young lady on the podcast. And I want to hear her story. And I think we all would want to hear your story. So if you would share your faith journey, just, however you feel, we'd really appreciate that.
Yeah, so I feel like a lot of people's faith starts from their parents. I feel like it's something that's kind of taught when you're younger, and your parents are your first exposure to faith. And so my dad grew up in the church, my mom grew up in the church. And when I was younger, we moved around a lot. And so we never really found our church home as I was growing up. And most recently, my grandfather, he was actually my social impact initiative with the Miss Florida organization is based on him. And he's a 12-year pancreatic cancer survivor before he passed away. And he was the most faithful man I ever knew. He went to church every single day. He prayed before meals. He was very faithful, and he shared that with me a lot. And so I feel like he was one of my biggest role models through faith. And he passed away this year. And I feel like really I'm newer to my faith journey personally. Outside of my parents, I feel like I haven't explored it enough myself. And so as I've gotten older and after he passed away, I really started to get more in tune with my own journey. And there's a church nearby called Journey Church. They actually do YouTubes and live streams, and they're actually pretty popular on the internet, which is cool because they're able to bring people in from all across the country. And a lot of my friends go to their Journey Students Nights, which are on Wednesdays. It's like a youth group. We all get the chance to we listen to a pastor and he talks to us, and then we all get a moment to kind of reflect on that and bring it back to our own lives and how we can implement that on a daily basis. And so I feel like that's where I really started on my own to fully accept Christ into my life and to fully follow him and to lean on him in different times of my life. And so I'd say, honestly, I'm probably more recent with my faith journey than a lot of people. And although Christ has always been in my life, I've never embraced him as much as I have recently. And I'm really proud that I've been able to do that more recently. And so I've been going to Journey Church. I go there every Sunday, and I've found different role models through that. And I've been trying to mentor myself. We have middle schoolers. And so I've been looking to find a good match who I can mentor and who I feel like I can learn a lot from myself. Because a lot of times you can learn a lot from younger people and you don't realize. So I'm only 17, but I know if I found a middle schooler, because they have the middle and high school, that I'd be able to mentor. I think we could learn a lot from each other. But we have a lot of great young pastors and people who teach us lessons and come in and talk to us. And so I feel like through that, I've really kind of found my faith. And Ruby Tillman, she was our Miss Florida's Outstanding Teen for 2021. She has been a huge role model in my life. Just watching her faith grow and how much she loves Christ and how much she goes out of her way to be faithful and to share that with all of us was something that really, really inspired me. And I know that I've talked a lot with her, and she's been someone who's been very, very outward and very open with anything. So I know she's someone I can go to. And having role models like that, I think, is probably the best way to really grow your faith yourself, and helping, learning by example and having people help you through those times when you kind of lose sight of where you want to be. And so something really cool that Ruby did for me is she used to reach out to me. And she still does, but, we've been together for the last week, so it hasn't been as much, but she reaches out and she'll ask how she can pray for me. And that's just something I thought was really sweet. And for me, that's something I've tried to implement also is, reaching out to people. How can I pray for you? How can I help you? And I think just leaning on Christ in those times is the best way to really share your faith and to embrace it more wholeheartedly yourself is just through other people. And I think that's the way that I've definitely found it the most is being with other people who are like-minded and being with other people who can really teach me things that I don't already know, because I am newer to really being in the church all the time. And it's just something that I've been trying to take step by step and just, follow my heart and follow my convictions on where that leads me, whether that's going online, whether that's going in person, and just different my comfort level, I think, has been something really cool that I've been able to explore, because I've always had a relationship with God and I've always had that
Mm.
relationship myself, but just being able to embrace that in public settings is something I've really worked on.
Ah.
So like even like this podcast, like super out of my comfort zone. But I was talking to my mom last night and I was like, I feel like I'm being called on to do this. And there's a reason that, you reach out to me, and there's a reason that I feel so drawn to do this, even though it's out of my comfort zone personally. I think that it's something that's going to help me to grow and help me to get closer to God and to really be able to embrace that, in the presence of other people as well. So
Yeah,
I feel
that's
like,
good.
yeah, I feel like that's what I got there.
Praise God. That's really good. You said I'm only 17,
Yeah.
and I immediately went to the internet because there was a poem, or it's not a poem. It was a
Mhm.
letter. There's a lady, her name was Dear Abby. Now, the older listeners will know right away. And I don't know if you're familiar with Dear Abby, but she was an advice columnist.
Mhm.
And years ago, she had this letter, and I'm not going to read the entire letter,
Uh-huh.
but I think it's significant. So a young person, it's about not drinking and driving.
Yeah.
And so this young person leaves this party, and I would encourage any listener who, if you've never heard of that, or if you want to revisit it, just go. All I did was type in, "Please God, I'm only 17," and
Mhm.
it was the first thing that popped up.
Yeah.
But you get this picture. This person is in a hospital,
Mhm.
and there are people around, and of course nobody can talk to her because they're dead.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to read this last little paragraph for our listeners and for you. And I think the reason why I'm reading this to you is not because of the person dying, but because the impact that you need to have as a 17-year-old,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. But I'm starting it says, "Please, somebody wake me up. Get me out of here. I can't bear to see my mom and dad so broken up. My grandparents are so racked with grief, they can hardly walk. My brother and sisters are like zombies. They move like robots in a daze. Everybody. No one can believe this. And I can't believe it either. Please don't bury me. I'm not dead. I have a lot of living to do. I want to laugh and run again. I want to sing and dance. Please don't put me in the ground. I promise, if you give me just one more chance, God, I'll be the most careful driver in the whole world. All I want is one more chance. Please, God, I'm only 17."
Mhm.
And I remember hearing that the years ago for the first time. And it's like, wow, that's kind of powerful, because that
Yeah.
person, their life is over, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like, you saying I'm only 17,
Uh-huh.
as I'm only 17, so I know I have a lot of, growing to do in my faith. And you're right.
Yeah.
But my prayer is that paragraph, there's such a sense of urgency there.
Yeah.
So much that this person wished they would have done, knowing the lives that they actually did touch, because
Yeah.
all these people are so hurt at the loss. Imagine if we were intentional
Mhm.
about going about God's business,
Yeah.
even though we're only 17.
Yeah. Intention is a big thing. And I think
Yeah.
it's very, very cool once you start to be once you start to have intention with your actions and with your, ability to serve God. And it's something I've been working on a lot. Just
Yeah.
intention and just, following through with what I'm called to do.
Praise God. So, following through what you're called to do, one of the
Yeah,
things that we're called to do is to kind of share our faith. You go to a public high school,
I do.
and you're 17,
Yes.
and you said, I've always had kind of my faith, but it's been difficult to kind of do it in public
Yes.
spaces. could you share maybe some of the kind of the lessons you've learned or things that you've been chewing on, where maybe times that you thought, man, I should have witnessed there, or, a time that you did witness and,
Mhm.
fell flat on your face. I know I have. And
Yeah.
so there's just anything along those lines.
Yeah. So at my high school, it's hard because I feel like there's a fine line between helping others through their faith and really being open about your love for God and what He's done for you, and being respectful of others' beliefs and others' position on things. Because in my high school in South Florida, we have a very, very large Jewish population. And I'm friends with a lot of Jewish people. And, we don't let our beliefs as far as God goes get in the way. And, whatever the discrepancies may be there. But we get every Jewish holiday off. And so there's a lot of, different faiths going on in my high school. And so I think it just depends on really finding those people who are like-minded and sharing your faith with them, going through that journey with them, rather than trying to share it with those who honestly may not be interested. There's some people who they're not on that track yet, and they're not ready to be enlightened by that yet. And I feel like you can't force that on someone. Like, I feel like it has to be your own personal choice to accept God into your life and to grow with God. But once someone makes that choice, I like to be there for them and to try and lead them through it the way Ruby and my grandfather did for me. And so I think it's just finding those like-minded people and trying to encourage them and stay with them, because it's hard when you first get started on, reading the Bible and going to church, to grow in discipline and to be disciplined in your actions and to be disciplined in your following of God. And so I think that just really finding those people who want to make the change and who want to accept Him into their lives, and encouraging them to grow in discipline, helping them to grow in discipline, because a lot of times it's not an easy step to take on your own, because it's hard, especially, when you're younger. It's hard. You get distracted, and there's so many little things that distract you, and you're not able to focus as well as when you get older and you grow in that discipline. And so with my school especially, it's kind of just accepting others' views, but also being there as someone to guide people when they want to learn more about God, when they want to know more about my journey and more about how I accepted people in, and encourage them. But something exciting for me, like I talked about with Journey students at my church, a lot of those kids do go to my school. And so that's a great place to kind of find your people and to find people who are going to also help me to be better and me to grow more. And so it's like, there's probably like 200-300 kids every single Wednesday for high school, and then 200 or 300 for middle school. Yeah, their saying is they try to make a big church feel small, because there's just so many people who come, and it's really cool to see, because they're from high schools all around. They're from my school, they're from other schools. And so meeting those people that I may not have crossed paths with, it's just been a great way for me to be more open about my faith, and having those conversations with people who already believe and already are on the same track as me, I think is very beneficial to having those conversations with those who may not already be on the same track as me. I feel like it's a comfort level. You kind of have to grow and go through the steps to get to that point where you're comfortable really being completely transparent and 100% with everybody.
Yeah, that's really good. I think that you may be underestimating the impact that you yourself are having on people, because it sounds like you're living a very respectful life, but at the same time, you're living a life for Christ. And this, would you call it the journey? Is that the name of it?
Yeah, it's called Journey Church.
Oh, Journey Church.
Yeah.
So, because you've said a couple of times, you've talked about the impact your grandfather's had on your life.
Yeah.
You've talked about the impact that Ruby has had on your life.
Yes.
And I want to get you to speak to this thought. I wonder, probably your grandfather more feeling formally, but I wonder if Ruby, if it was so much Ruby coming to you and sitting down with you and let's go over this Bible, or more of Ruby living what the Bible says we need to live. So you look at her and you say, okay, that's an example I can follow.
Yes.
Would you speak kind of to that, if I'm on the right track?
Yeah, I would say you're very spot on with the second part about her just kind of living through, God, and living a very righteous life and doing what she's called to do. And she kind of told me one time, she said, I'm someone that's very strong in my convictions. If I have an issue, I pray about it. And whatever God tells me, whether at the time I necessarily agree with that or not, I follow my convictions and I follow what he tells me. And I think just seeing someone who can follow through so well with what's told to her, what's laid out for her, even if it doesn't feel right in the moment, because I think a lot of times we've self-doubt, and a lot of times we kind of consider whether or not we have a lack of trust sometimes. At least for me, like I've always struggled with a lack of trust. And so trying to really lean into that and seeing her lean into that so wholeheartedly. And even my grandfather, although he was more formal, it was just the small acts, like the little ways he'd go out of his way. So my mom told me this story about him traveling. Him and my grandmother loved to travel. And so they went to, I think it was like Bermuda or something one time. They went somewhere like crazy. And he like searched this entire trip. He made sure he found a Catholic church for Sunday. So they had to drive like 3 hours for him to get to this Catholic church on Sunday, and it had to be Catholic church because he was a very strong Catholic. And so it had to be a Catholic church, and he drove 3 hours out of there. Oh my gosh, like he's making me drive all this way, but he needed to go to that Catholic church because for him, the type of cancer he had, the survival rate was just 5%. So the chance of him surviving were so slim. And so I think that, him praying and him being so faithful, God really gave him that second chance. And I think when he realized that God had given him that second chance that he didn't give a lot of other people, he really, really fell into his faith. And he wanted to repay God for the opportunity to watch his grandchildren grow up, to watch his children grow up. And so he never wavered in that faith after he was saved, from that cancer.
Yeah.
And so whenever he traveled, he made a point to find a Catholic church wherever he was. And so just seeing his dedication, I think, and Ruby's dedication is just something that's always really inspired me, is watching them play out what they've been called to do.
Yeah, that's really good. I want to piggyback a little bit on what you just said, because I think sometimes, especially as Christians, there's this conversation, is it a requirement to go to church? Is it not a requirement to go to church? And I believe most mature Christians would fall on, it is a requirement to be around a body of believers because you have to share the gifts that God has given you. But I would take it a little further with what you just said. Your grandfather his conviction was, I need to be in church with a group of people that are Catholic. Yes. And I'm going to do what I need to do to go to be there. And I think there will be, and if I'm talking to you out there in podcast land, just receive this. But there'll be people who will say, well, he doesn't need to do that. Well, he wanted to. But no, he needed to do that. Yeah. That was a must for him because he purposed in his heart, he was going to do that. And so if he didn't do that, he, for what, he believed and where he felt how he wanted to worship God, he would be falling short in that moment. And so I think that's why I wanted to kind of sit here for a second. Yeah. For the person who's out there thinking, well, he didn't need to do that. Yes, he did. Because it's right. It's the good that he felt he needed to do. James 4:17 says, anyone who knows the good he ought to do and doesn't do it sins. And so when God tells you, this is what I want you to do, when you don't do it, then you are being disobedient, which is what sin is. So I wanted to just sit there for a second because that I can just sense somebody saying, oh, well, he doesn't have to drive 3 hours. No, he did have to drive 3 hours.
He needed to for him.
Right. For his sake. So look, as we're out here helping the people get saved out here, man. So you're Miss Miami Outstanding Teen, right? Not the beach, just straight Miss Miami Outstanding Teen. Yeah. Because I said that in the intro. And so now I can feel better. I don't have to go redo the intro. Yeah. You're a junior, about to be a senior in high school?
Yes.
Yeah. And you have a foundation.
Kind of. I do a lot of work, but I don't have my own 501c3. I
But
do.
I guess that's not fair for me to say. You have a platform. I
I
said
do. Yeah, I have a
foundation,
platform.
but I was more meaning with pancreatic cancer, and
Yes,
you do work with that.
mhm.
Are you in some extracurricular stuff at school as well?
I am. Yeah, I'm
And,
going on my 4th year of cheer, and then I'm student government president.
okay, I heard you say that. I
Yeah.
heard you say that. And so, how do you balance your schedule and keep God first?
Yeah, actually, I was just the day before I left for Miss Flores at St. 18 was a Sunday, and I couldn't go into church in person, but I watched their video message
Mm,
on YouTube actually, which is a cool tool. But they were actually the pastor. He was preaching about how if you give God your first, he'll figure out the rest. And he worded it way better than I can, but he had like a cute little saying about it. And he basically talked to us about how if you give God the first in your life without any guarantee of the rest. So
mm,
let's say you're a farmer and you give him your first cattle and there's no guarantee you're going to have any more, but you gave him your first. He'll sort out the rest for you was kind of like the analogy for it. So for me, like I was really inspired by that. And I thought it was really cool to think about how if you're giving him your first, he'll figure out the rest. And there was another analogy about how you may run low on things, but you'll never run out. You may run low on faith, you may run low on time, but you're never going to run out of it if you give God your first and if you give him your best. And so every morning I pray. I drive in silence. It's just something I always like to drive in silence. I'm not a big fan of music and stuff. And so
how
I
about that?
was in the morning, I get up and I go, and wherever I'm going that day, if it's school, if it's cheer practice, if it's student government, painting sessions for homecoming, which is all stuff I've been doing this summer, I drive in silence and I just talk to God. I pray
Mm,
for people like my family that I'm going on that cruise with. They're traveling up to Greece right now. They're on a plane. So like this morning, I prayed for a safe flight for them. My grandfather had a stroke this morning, and so I prayed for health for him
mm,
and for God to watch over him. For my family, I prayed for my dad to have comfort. That's his dad, so I prayed for
mm,
comfort for him. I prayed for peace of mind for me, just with my schedule coming up and just making sure I have time to do everything. And just little things like each day it depends, but if there's someone specific I think struggling, I'll pray for them. I prayed for Ashna in her transition period right now. She's
mm.
about to go on to Miss America's Outstanding Teen, and that's going to be crazy. And so, I prayed for her to have peace of mind and comfort as she prepares for that. And so it's just different aspects. And I think once you start giving God that first, and you pray for all the different people in your life and all the different aspects of your life, it really brings comfort to the beginning of your day. And you go about the rest of your day knowing that God's got this. You already told him what you need for him. You asked of him to
Mm.
sort out those worries, and he's got it. He's going to sort it all out for you. And so that's been something that I've really done to prioritize it. And then also I try to pray before I go to bed, but that's a little bit harder with the schedule and all. But I always make sure the first thing in the morning is I pray, I talk to God, and I also make time to go, to my church in person every Sunday morning and every Wednesday night. I go in person and I just be around all those people who love God and who want to share that message and want to support each other. And I think that's always been really helpful for me, is just being around people who have the same ideas as me, who want the same things as me. And so I feel like it's just prioritizing. If you prioritize it, there's basically time for anything in your schedule. It's just about how you place it out in that list of priorities.
Yeah, that's good. I like what you said. If you give God your first, he will take care of the rest.
Yeah, they had
And
some fun
so,
saying, but I can't remember. It was something
well,
along those lines.
no, that's good. As far
Yeah.
as I'm concerned, that's what it is. And if you're saying
Yeah.
that isn't what it is, then I'm going to attribute it to Maddie Flowers.
Okay.
So Maddie
I'll take
Flowers
it.
says, if you give God your first, he will take care of the rest. I think that's really good.
Yeah.
I'm just sitting in that for a second. That's
Yeah. I was
really good.
inspired by it when they said it. I was like, that's smart. And you're in your mornings are usually less hectic. If you just take that little amount of time, like the time I have to drive from my house to my school or my house to the cheer gym, like that 10, 15, 20 minutes, and just sit in silence and just talk to God, it's really powerful. And I feel like you get out of that car with a sense of like calmness, and you know that what you just talked about, it's all sorted out, and that you don't need to let that weigh on your mind any longer.
Yeah. I'm writing that down, so it'll be in the notes. I drive in silence. I don't know. I don't remember who it was. It could have even been my own daughter, but I like to drive in silence as well. But I also like to drive listening to music or podcasts or whatever.
I do that sometimes.
And whoever it was, this was years ago, but I didn't have the radio on. I didn't have any music going. They were like, how can you drive like that? Or,
Yes.
So I love it. I love the silence. My wife and I drove to Atlanta, and Atlanta's from where we live is like a 6 or 7 hour drive.
Wow.
And I don't think we used like music or the radio or anything. We just talked. And now it's possible, maybe it was just for a part of the time, because I don't remember. I do know that it was a long period of time. So I love that. Yeah. I drive in silence. I like that. So when you're in the silence and your God is speaking to you, is there a theme recently that God is teaching you? Is there something kind of, you keep hearing this over and over? What's God teaching you today or these days?
I would say something really big for me. I actually, I read this on there's been a lot of state competitions right now for Miss America and different states going on. And I read this in somebody's post, and I feel like God has really pushed this on me lately. And it's the saying, this or better. It's not a Bible verse. It's just a saying. And I just thinking about every little thing in your life, and the fact that an opportunity may not come to you, but there's something else coming, or you're going to fulfill some other wish that God has for you better if you don't take this opportunity. And so I think I've just been really inspired by that lately, and just been very, very satisfied with where I'm at right now in everything, and in school and everything else that I have going on, and just taking in this or better. The fact that although I may have wanted something really bad and it didn't come to me, there's going to be some other plan, and there's going to be some other path that God makes straight for me, and that I'm going to go on to pursue. And it's going to be so much more than I ever could have imagined for myself. And I think lately that's just been the biggest thing on my mind, is probably just embracing the wins with the losses, and just embracing that God has a plan for me, and that I need to trust in that, and I need to take a step back and just reflect and enjoy all that's going on in this season of my life right now.
Yeah, that's good. You say this or better, and Philippians 1, Paul is having kind of this, he wants to be here doing what God's called him to do.
Yeah.
But he also wants to be with Christ. And he says, which is better by far. And so when you say this or better, that's what came to my mind, is just this idea of heaven, to be with Christ is better by far than to be here. But God has us doing stuff. So I like that. This or better is really good. Did you have a particular Bible passage that gets you through the tough times, or?
I have one, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily one of hope. I would say it's more of just like a nice saying to go by. It says, but I say, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. It's Matthew 5:44. And I think especially in high school, a lot of times, a lot of the difficulties you go through are not as much family based, but more like social based. A lot of, mean girls, and just there's little things in high school, and a lot of social things that get high schoolers down. And I think in any situation in life, just praying for those who wish bad upon you, or, who persecute you, as it's said in that, can solve a lot of your own issues when you're thinking, instead of hating them back, or, wishing bad upon them like they do to me, just love them, and just love them for whatever's going on in their life to where they can't love you back. And so I think just thinking of that, it's just a great spin that can be applied to so many things, and a positive spin on things. Because I think if you get out of the negative mind space, anything that you're struggling with, once you give it to God, it's not going to be something that's really going to weigh you down.
Man, that's good. When you get out of the negative mind space and give it to God, you
Yeah.
know, as a high school teacher,
Yeah.
juniors are my zone. Like that's my jam. So when you said you were 17, I was like,
Mhm.
okay, most juniors turn 17. And
Yeah.
so that's why I figured you were probably about to be a senior. But I
Yes.
can't tell you the number of times it just kind of like that negative self-talk.
Yes.
Uh, and so, when you're negative with yourself, it's a lot easier for you to start being negative towards others. You did
Yes.
this to me, I'm going to do this back to you. And so, yeah, I think it's just so important to remember that, pray for your enemies. You know,
Exactly.
ooh, I just had a thought. This might be a good soundbite. Pray for your enemies, even when your worst enemy is yourself.
Oh,
Come
that's
on
really
now.
good. That's really good. That's really good.
Well, you inspired it.
You said
Because you inspired it.
it.
Yeah. So I didn't have any options.
I like
So
that.
so let's encourage the people. What kind of words of encouragement do you have for the listeners?
I would say just stay strong in your convictions, and your way of following God may not be somebody else's. And it's okay to have your own unique way of connecting with God. I think a lot of times the struggle for people is just thinking there's only one way to connect with God. There's only one way to love him and one way for him to love you. But I think when you really open yourself up to following what works best for you and what works best for your relationship, it's so unique. Everybody has their own relationship with God. Everybody talks to him about different things and puts different worries on him and, asks him to solve different problems and to lead them in different directions. And so I think just embracing that your relationship is so unique and that, it's cool to talk to others about how they've trusted their faith. And it's cool to, talk about different ways that you can, talk to God and to embrace him. But I think just allowing yourself to find your own path of honoring him and your own path of being led by him is something really important. Something someone said to me was that once you embrace him, he won't hide from you. And I think I've really kind of seen that. It's crazy once you start opening up your eyes, all the ways that this is totally off topic, but all the ways that like he acts in your life and like the little signs, like something funny. Like I told this to Ainsley actually, the girl in that photo. I was backstage and I have a cross necklace I wear all the time. I have the silver one and I had a gold one. And when I was preparing for Miss Florida's Outstanding Teen, I broke the necklace doing a headstand and my aunt said she'd fix it for me. So I gave it to her. And that was 3-4 months back. It was a while ago. And I was backstage getting ready for finals. We're in our dresses. We're all waiting backstage, talking to each other. And I have this little bag of, it was like hair clips or something. It was something random, nothing related to jewelry, like hair clips or something. And I'm grabbing a hair clip out of the bag and I pull out this cross that I'd broken 3 or 4 months prior. And I have no idea how it got in that bag. Like, no clue. I hadn't seen it. I'd been thinking about it because I love that necklace and I was hoping we could get it fixed, but I hadn't seen it. I hadn't thought about it. My aunt hadn't mentioned it. I had thought she had dropped it off at the jeweler to get it fixed. And I pulled out this cross before we went to go get called for top 10. And in that moment, I was like, you know what? I said, whatever happens, I said, if they call my name in that top 13, if they don't call my name in that top 13, it's part of God's plan. Like he's telling me right now, like this is like, I can ignore this and say, oh, that's a funny coincidence. But right now in this moment, he's calling to me. He's telling me that this is part of my plan, whatever's about to happen, and to embrace it and to make the most out of whatever opportunity is about to come. I mean, because there's no way that cross how did that cross get in there? It's crazy because you think about those little things and it's something like my biggest way of like embracing him has just been him showing me those little signs, him, guiding me through those stressful or hard moments. And so just finding that for me was something that I was like, wow, like that's crazy. Like right now he's telling me like I need to just embrace whatever happens. If I don't make that top 13, it's not meant to be. I'm not meant to make that top 13 and that's okay. And there's something else coming for me. And so in that moment, I was just so at peace because I just knew whatever was about to happen, that he was laying it out for me and that he was telling me in that moment just to trust him and to trust what he had going for me. And so that was a cool moment. And so I think for me, like our relationship is through like him doing earthly acts for me to see him and to physically like feel him there. So I just feel like, open yourself up and allow your journey with him to be your own, and don't let others kind of influence the way that you love on him and you allow him to love on you.
Praise God. That's really good. You said if I make the top 13 or don't make the top 13, I did say this in the intro, but did you make the top 13?
I did, yeah.
Did you make the top 5?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, I know you did. I know you did.
Yeah. But like even going back for when they were about to call top 5, I kind of just thought back to that moment. I said, you know what? I said last year I didn't make top 13. I said, so right now, no matter what happens, I've already improved, and it's progress over perfection. Like I've worked hard and I improved, even if I don't make that top 5. And like I just was very at peace in that moment, just knowing that God had a plan for me and I just needed to trust it. And even, it's disappointing. Everybody gets disappointed, I think. But like in that moment, I was so satisfied and so like fulfilled. I didn't need to make the top 5 to be happy. And, I didn't need to get like, it didn't matter where I placed once I made that top 5. I was so fulfilled to be there and so happy to have, given myself to God that week and allowed him to guide me through that week, that I didn't need to place top 5. I didn't need to win the pageant. I didn't need to do any of those things to be fulfilled, because just being there and just having him tell me in that moment with that cross that he was there and that he believed in me and that I had already done so much for myself, that's all I needed. And I didn't need a placement to tell me that, because he had already told me that himself.
Praise God.
Yeah.
I need that to marinate. I didn't need a placement to tell me that. He had already told me himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With that cross. And that's what I told my mom. I said, I literally backstage, you kind of think through your head. I said, I told her, I said backstage, I said they called me for top 10 and like I was so fulfilled. Like I obviously I want to do my best performance. I wanted to, leave it all out on the floor and leave it all out on the stage. But once they called me for top 10, like I'd already made progress, and that's enough for me to make progress and to improve as a person and as a competitor. And so like when I found that cross, I kind of just knew, I said, whatever happens, like I've made it here and I've glorified him through this week. And that was my biggest goal, was in this unique situation, being around all these like-minded girls, to glorify him and to just really share him with them and have him calm them in moments of stress and to help be that liaison for those people. And so just knowing that I've already accomplished that, and that was really my goal for that week, was I feel like just enough for me. And I felt very, very satisfied with where I had ended up, even if I hadn't have gotten top 5, although that was really awesome. And I was very excited, it wasn't about that, it was like a cherry on top, but the ice cream sundae was already made. That was just a little cherry on top to like end it out, but I didn't need it, it was just cool.
That's really good. So I want to share something with the listeners and share with you.
Yeah.
During orientation, just to take you guys into kind of how I first noticed Maddie, was at orientation, I worked the t-shirt table.
Yes.
And Maddie was the coolest young lady. She was not in a rush to get in processed. I think you're waiting for your mom.
I was.
Yeah. And so I took note that even though you were waiting for your mom, you weren't pressed. You weren't like, man, she needs to get here. It was like, hey, I'm waiting for my mom. When she comes, we'll go through this. And I was struck in that moment. And in that moment, I remembered your name. When we left orientation, I didn't even know you barely from the Man on the Moon.
Yeah.
But I knew Maddie Flowers. That name stuck out in my mind. And so I think in part, that's why when I saw your post of you praying with, who'd you say it was? Ainsley
Mahan.
Ainsley. Praying with Ainsley Mahan, I said, in that moment, I need to get her on the podcast. And I've probably used to be one that was nervous or, I don't want to ask. But now, no, bro, I'm going to ask. If she says no, all right, she already isn't. You know what I'm saying? Like there already isn't a podcast episode with her, so we would move forward. But I was pretty confident that we could figure it out. And I do want to say thank you for you guys who are listening, and we're wrapping up. But for you guys who are listening, Maddie's got a busy schedule, and she literally fit this in because I just talked to her yesterday. And I said, hey, you know, are you able to come on? She said, yes, I'm going somewhere, I think Friday or Thursday.
We're leaving the country on Friday.
Right. And I'm leaving the state because, you know, I don't want to just say going out of town because I want to sound cool. But I'm leaving Thursday. And then tomorrow night, you know, I'm a youth pastor. So tomorrow can get funky. And so just long story short form, I asked, not only did she say yes, but she kind of hustled. And so thank you very much for that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the opportunity. I mean, I feel like, I'm not gonna lie, like I feel like you and me talked about this, but you know, being on a podcast and talking about God and how he's acted in my life for, I don't know how many listeners you have, but for just, you know, a bunch of people to listen to is very out of my comfort zone. And I think you giving me that push and you giving me the opportunity is definitely my next step in really embracing God in public settings. And I think, you know, God's acting through you in very powerful ways, and just having, you know, you offer me this opportunity, like I really appreciate it. And I think I've definitely grown a lot through this like 45 minutes and just being able to share, because people always say, like they're say, you know, you speak so well, but I feel like when it gets to the topic of faith and, you know, religion, I feel like for me that's something it's so vulnerable. And so I've never been someone who I feel like has spoken very eloquently about it. And so having the opportunity to really embrace the imperfection, embrace the fact that although it's out of my comfort zone, you know, you're giving me this opportunity and like God is calling me to spend this time with you and talk to you about these things is something really cool. And I really appreciate you putting me out of my comfort zone, even though you didn't know you were, like just giving me the opportunity to really kind of grow in my faith through this podcast. I really appreciate that.
Praise God. So how can people contact you or follow your journey, you know, through social media?
Yeah, so I have an Instagram and a Facebook. My Facebook is just Maddie Flowers, Maddie.
Maddie Flowers, quit lying to the people, girl. You know you don't go on your Facebook.
I do. I try to post on it. I've gotten better about it. But I also have an Instagram. That I'm slightly more active on. And it's Maddie, Maddie .Breton, BRETON .flowers, FLOWERS. And I'm slightly more active on that, but I'm pretty good about Facebook too.
Well, you know, I don't know because I haven't followed you very long on those, but I will. Yeah. I'm going to take a peek. As a high school teacher, most high school students, when I talk about Facebook, they almost always say, "Oh, that's for old people." That's why I'm saying quit lying to the people. But because you're a title holder, maybe because you got to interact with everybody.
Yeah, I try to share on both because it's completely different audiences on both platforms. So I try my best, but I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I forget, and I don't feel like going back and fixing it. So I'm just like, all right, that's fine. That one's for Instagram. Like I try.
Fair enough. Well, thank you very much. I hope you have a great time. And did you say on here where you're going? Because I'm not trying to put it out.
I don't think I did.
People. Well, let's don't tell them then. Tell. They don't need to know. They don't need to know. That's us. And then watch. You did say it on the podcast, and everybody's like, "We already know." But thank you very much for your time. Greatly appreciate you, and look forward to being together again. Whether that's next year or who knows what the Lord will have. You said Lake Worth. How do you spell that? Is that like a weird spelling?
No, LakeWorth.
Oh, okay. So common spelling.
Yeah, just basic.
In my brain, I had it like WIERTH or something like that.
No, super basic. Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And it's been fun.